So we had the experimental parents, the experimental brother, my one sibling, and my experimental daughter. And believe me, she is an experiment at times. She's 20. She's in college, and she's a biology major, and it basically made me test her. But I could see from my parents at least, where I got a lot of these genes, because that's obviously where you get them. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I do encourage you. There's a website, experimentalman.com, and of course the book here, which I believe is for sale. Not that I'm pitching it, but anyway, there's a lot more information about this. But I did come up high risk for heart attack and a number of markers and other tests that I took, very surprisingly, because my family doesn't have a history of heart disease. But if you look at my parents were carriers of a lot of these genetic disorders. It's called heterozygote. They carried markers that, when combined, sometimes can produce a higher risk, and that's essentially what happened with me here. So I'll spend the last 3 or 4 minutes here telling you about the brain, because I said it was genes, environment, brain, and body. I was in an MRI scanner, as I said, way too many hours. I was tested for everything from greed and altruism to belief in God, politics. I mean, basically, they're sticking people's heads in these machines and asking them all kinds of questions, and they're seeing where the blood flows in the brain, which gives, at least theoretically, some idea of what you're thinking and what part of your brain is being activated. And the one I'll tell you is a field called neuroeconomics. And this is at New York University, and I spent 6 hours in the MRI getting a whole series of tests. And mainly what they're looking for is why economic theory doesn't always work. And I think we're all real curious about this right now. They're sticking a lot of traders on Wall Street in these machines and finding out why they make irrational decisions. Again, wouldn't we like to know? And by doing this, they can run various risk-taking scenarios and find out what parts of the brain are being activated. And it might tell people, why do you buy a stock when it's high and sell it when it's low? I mean, that's obviously we shouldn't do that, but everybody does at some point if you own stock. So they tested me for that, but much more fun is they tested me for something called neuromarketing. And neuromarketing is beginning to happen with marketers where they'll stick basically consumers into the MRI and they'll show them products. And they'll ask people to rate them. So your conscious mind, in this case it was 1 to 8, do you love this product or do you not? And they showed me things like movie posters and CDs and some other products like that, some books. And so they showed me a movie poster for a film called Pan's Labyrinth. And I don't know if you saw that film, but it's an art film. It's a very dark, violent film. It showed mostly in art houses. And I've been a filmmaker off and on. I have a lot of friends who are filmmakers. So I fancy myself a sort of film intellectual. And I press 8. Love that film. Oh, yeah. Really love it. 8. Unfortunately, my brain outed me on this. It turns out that my brain much preferred Dodgeball, the movie. The Ben Stiller movie. And there's partly a reason for that, because those movies are specifically designed to hit those emotional, basically, 13-year-old boy sort of sinners in my brain, that love the crude, lowbrow humor. But that was a surprise, obviously, to me, and I felt rather battered in my intellectual sensibility. And I do have to say, though, the second one I liked most after Dodgeball was The Kite Runner, which, is a literary book, so I felt a little better about that. But then we had Dreamgirls. I don't know where that came from. Beethoven was up there somewhere, too. But what ends up happening here, when you see these scans, you see a series of images. And actually, I even have some movies of these images where they put the scans together into a movie. And what you see there is that your brain is talking, or different parts of your brain are talking to other parts of your brain. And we sometimes think we just make a decision and there it is. But what you learn is that old mind, body or mind-brain dichotomy, which Descartes and lots of philosophers have talked about forever, it's a little of both. I mean, in some ways, your rational brain up here, which says, I love Pan's Labyrinth, is trying to convince the rest of your brain, yes, you love it too. But the emotional part says, no, dodgeball, dodgeball. And you can actually see that. Yeah, you can actually see that happening. And that's a kind of funny one. But when you get into disease areas, things like fear and anxiety and other emotional disorders that I was tested for as a healthy individual, you begin to see where the brains sometimes break down in that area. And it's not functioning properly. The emotional part, or the fear part, for instance, for people who have anxiety disorders, overrides the rational brain telling you, don't be afraid. So anyway, to wind this up, at the end of the book, there's the body section, and that's where I try to tie together all of this. And I think we're becoming pretty soon here into a future where we'll all be having, at least at our disposal, if we want them, access to literally thousands of different testing risk factors. And I don't know if I have my iPhone right here, but at the end of the book, I suggest we will actually someday have a little device that will look something like this, and might be called an eye health, something like that. And we'll have biomonitors in our homes. And by the way, some people will have these and some won't. It's just like now. Some people will care about it, some people won't. Hopefully, we won't be required to have it. But you'll be able to determine basically what you eat. If you remember Star Trek with the tricorders, it'll be something like that. And we're not that far. We're probably a generation away from having something like that, I believe. And essentially, that's what the book is about: is how close are we to this? There's a kind of consumer reports aspect to the book. These genetic tests you see online, how good are they? Some of them are, some of them aren't. So all of this is encompassed in the project, and it will be continuing. I'm about to get my full sequence done of DNA. I had my proteome scanned in my blood, which is all the proteins in my blood. I'm having my microbiome scanned, and those are all little creepy critters that are inside of you. About 3 to 5% of human mass, body mass, is actually little critters, bacteria, microbes. Yeah, they're in there right now. In fact, they're digesting your meal. Anyway, I'll stop there, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk here, and I could obviously go on, but there's a lot more information on the book and on the website, so, and we'll have some questions, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just to quickly segue on that last note, there are 10 times more bacterial cells on you than there are human cells on you. So you're 10 times more bacteria than you are human. So when you talk about the human genome, what does that mean? Is it the human genome or the microbiome? And, so I'm going to take just a minute and a half to tell you a little bit about how you can potentially save the world, and then take another minute and a half to tell you about what I'm doing over at Aromics down the street at BioEnterprise. So, and I'd like to address this to the students, because this is where you guys can really make a difference, right? This is where you could potentially not just save thousands of lives, but you could save millions of lives individually. You can do it. If you look at the odds of dying, right? Everyone in the room here, I hate to say it, we're all going to die, right? The odds are 1 in 1. But what are the odds? What are the odds of dying from heart disease, right? 1 in 5. What are the odds of dying from cancer? 1 in 7. From stroke, 1 in 24. And that's premature death, right? So if you add up those numbers per generation, that's about 2.5 billion humans that will die early, right? If you think about that and try and put that onto a scale of human existence, what's worse than 2.5 billion people dying prematurely? I guess it's extinction, right? So I'm going to take it a step back so we can ease up our thoughts here. Well, I'm not going to ask you to save us from extinction, but there's 2.5 billion people out there that need some help, right? And we're in a biotechnological era. There's a tremendous change since 1985 till 2010, right? This period, it's been enormously, the change has been extremely rapid. And life itself, the essence of life, the essence of the life in these flowers is now becoming a substrate for engineering. Life can now be engineered. Our kids, our grandkids may be at a point where they can live potentially 150 years old or longer and potentially have rejuvenation. So we're going to come to a point where there's going to be an enormous amount of change. So you guys can make an incredible contribution. Let me tell you what I'm doing.